everybody, how are you? Because I've been doing not great. Well, more specifically, my personal life has been going quite well. But if you've been conscious any time in the last couple of weeks, you know that Trump is going to be our president. Again. That hit me hard. For about a week after the election, every morning when I woke up, my heart fell right into my shoes. I just started imagining all of the horrible, insane crap that's about to happen, and my head just explodes. It got so bad that I had to take a step back for a little bit. I just couldn't think about it for too long without having to sit down and take some deep breaths. I work in a hospital, for Christ's sakes, and RFK Jr. is soon going to be in charge of healthcare. A dude with literal worms in his brain, who randomly cuts the heads off of whales and leaves dead bears in Central Park, is going to be responsible for the health and safety of American citizens. Let's not forget that this guy's insanity already killed dozens of children in Samoa when he lied to their local government about the dangers of the measles vaccine, let alone how many people have died needlessly because of all of his COVID misinformation. What's next? Am I going to have to start treating patients with freaking polio? I don't know. I really don't know. And that's what freaks me out. It freaked me out so bad that I just had to step away. But as scary as the future might be, my work does a great job of reminding me why I got into politics in the first place. Back when I was a paramedic over in Israel, I never really got to know my patients. Our goal was to get those people to the hospital as quick as possible so that they could get the real care that they needed as opposed to the preliminary stuff that we could manage in an ambulance. Now it's different. I spend weeks, sometimes months, seeing the same patients. I get to know them, their families, their stories, and those stories stick with me. I think about them even on my days off. How are they doing? What are their prospects? Are they feeling any better? Etc., etc. And I've been lucky enough to meet some really great people. People who restore my faith in humanity, frankly. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, I have to watch them suffer. Sometimes a person's condition is simply at a point where there's nothing medical science can do for them. And while that's a tragedy, it's something I can accept and understand. The place where I work is objectively one of the best hospitals in the country. But still, there are some things that just can't be fixed. I get that. Those situations aren't the ones that bother me. What really gets to me are those times when I see someone suffering not because of a medical problem, but because of stupid political bullshit. I'll give you an example. Now, of course, I'm not going to be giving any specifics to protect his privacy, but I'll give you the gist. At this point, I have a patient who needs dialysis in order to live. His organs simply can't filter his blood in the way that they need to keep him healthy. Now, that's a big deal, but it's very medically solvable. We have dialysis. We have had it for quite a while now, and the technology is getting better every day. Medically and technically speaking, we can keep him healthy and comfortable to the point where he could live his life. The problem here isn't medicine, it's money. He can't get Medicaid/Medicare to cover at-home dialysis for him in the state that he was in the process of moving to. And he certainly can't afford it out of pocket. This guy isn't Elon Musk. He's a normal, working-class guy. He busted his ass his whole life so that he could enjoy his retirement with his family. Instead, he's stuck spending most of his time alone in a freaking hospital bed. He has to pay something like $200 a day so that his wife can stay in a nearby hotel and visit him. The worst part of this is that the longer someone stays in a hospital bed, the more it decreases their mobility and the harder it will be for him to get up and moving again, even if the at-home dialysis would be covered. Just think about that for a minute. Imagine what that must feel like, to watch the last days of your life slowly slipping away from you, knowing that you'll never have that time back, knowing that you'll never get the chance to spend that time on your own terms, with your own family. It's almost unfathomably cruel. And it's not just cruel, it's also stupid. Because it's not like anybody is saving a penny on this. Instead of spending a couple of $100 to get this man his dialysis, the medical system is spending thousands and thousands of dollars every goddamn day just to keep this guy miserable. The idiocy of it is almost beyond belief. And I know for a fact that had this happened to him in Israel, he would not be having this problem. Universal medical care would see him covered and taken care of. Yet in the richest and most powerful country on earth, somehow we can't pull this off. And I know for a fact that Donald Trump and all of the people in his administration aren't going to spend a single second thinking about his pain. They're not going to give the vaguest hint of a crap about some little old dude and his failing liver, about the stress and agitation his wife is going through, or their kids, or about anyone other than themselves and how much money they can bilk out of the system in the next 4 years. But I do care. I actually talk to these people. I see the pain on their faces. I have to listen to their families crying. And it reminds me that we can't give up. The fight isn't over. It's just getting started. And I'm actually starting to realize more and more just how true that is. The fight is just getting started. Because the issue we're facing is bigger than most people think or are afraid to admit. Which brings me to my main point. Why did Trump win? Because he did win. And as he would say, bigly. I expect that he had a more than even chance of winning. I was expecting that. I did not expect him to win the popular vote. I did not expect him to make gains among minorities. He did better, much better than in 2016. And that was despite the criminal convictions, the coup, the million dead COVID victims, and all the insanity of his first term. This isn't the video where I go into why Trump is such a catastrophe, though. That'll be coming up later. I just wanted to point out how there isn't a single Democrat screaming about voter fraud or urging Biden and Harris to interfere with the certification or any of that. Of course, there are no Republicans talking about voter fraud either. It was one thing to constantly scream about tens of millions of stolen votes during election season, but now that Trump won, there's just no reason to keep that particular lie going. Don't worry, they'll find new ones. Anyway, back to the main point. In the weeks after the election, everyone and their grandma was giving their opinions, very confidently, I might add, explaining why Trump won. It was because of inflation, it was because of Gaza, it was because of healthcare, it was because of foreign spending, it was because Democrats were too woke, it was because Democrats weren't woke enough, it was because Biden dropped out too late, it was because he shouldn't have dropped out at all, it was because Harris stuck too close to Biden, it was because Harris was too radical, a departure from Biden, and so on and so on and so on. Basically, whatever that person's main issue was before the election, that's the factor they focused on to explain the outcome. And I'm sure there's some truth in many of these issues. Maybe if some things had gone differently, we'd have had a different outcome. But in reality, all of that stuff is largely besides the point. This is far bigger than any issue, or even any particular election. The fact that this racist, rapist, criminal, idiot, traitor was even a viable candidate means that our politics are broken on a much more fundamental level. And I actually think that the clearest example of that comes from something that Harris said rather than Trump. Take a look.
As president, would you support the effort to expand NATO to include Ukraine?
Those are all issues that we will deal with if and when it arrives at that point. Right now, we are supporting Ukraine's ability to defend itself against Russia's unprovoked aggression. Donald Trump, if he were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
So, that's a bullshit answer. You can't, on the one hand, talk about how Trump betrays our allies and isn't willing to protect democracy, and at the same time refuse to even give a real answer to whether or not you're going to support those same democratic allies. But the problem isn't that one stupid answer. The problem is why she felt the need to say something like that. Our aid to Ukraine is, supposedly, based on principles, like the value of human rights and protecting democracy abroad. And very often, people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris talk as if those principles are broadly, if not universally, accepted. But they aren't. This isn't 1990 where we've just won the Cold War. Things have changed. America has changed. And it's not just the principles where people disagree, it's the facts themselves. Like whether Ukraine even is a democratic nation fighting off a murderous, autocratic invader. It is, and they are, but half of America doesn't think that's the case. And that is why democracy is breaking down. Not just here, but all over the world. Democracy is, at the end of the day, fundamentally about getting people to agree about how we get our society from point A to point B. From the life that we have to the life that we want to have. But we can't agree on basic facts. We can't even agree on where point A is. Likewise, if we don't agree on our principles, if we don't agree on how we want our society to change, if we can't agree on the point B we're trying to get to, then what the hell are we doing? We're going with no clue where we are or where we're headed. Is it any wonder when we get lost in some pretty weird and crazy places? The situation is, as it stands, pretty damn dire. But it's not hopeless. There is a way forward. Let me give you an example. If you've seen some of my previous videos, you probably know I don't have a car. So I spend a lot of time in Ubers, talking to Uber drivers. And quite often, I end up having some pretty interesting conversations. Let me give you an example. In this particular case, my driver was a middle-aged black dude, maybe 40, 45 years old, educated guy. He'd written a fiction novel as a hobby, which he wanted to turn into a movie, but not a historian or a political junkie or anything like that. You know, this guy was a perfect example of your average American working-class voter. Anyway, we started talking, and I mentioned my time in Israel, and of course that turned into a conversation about the violence in Gaza, and how these people who were neighbors hated each other so much, etc., etc. And he could tell that I'm a pretty patient and open-minded guy, so he says something like this. He says to me, I want to ask you a question, but I don't mean to sound prejudiced or anything, I'm just trying to understand. And I say to him, go for it, man, I'm not going to judge you, just tell me what you're thinking. And he says to me, why are Jews so tight with their money? Now, when he said that, I didn't get mad at him, even though I am a Jew. In fact, I was glad that he felt comfortable enough to share that with me. Instead of biting his head off and getting all pissy, I just asked him a few more questions. Why did he think that Jews were tight with their money? And he told me a story about when he had been working for one of those delivery apps, and he ended up delivering some food to some Jewish college kid who didn't give him a tip. The moment stuck with him because he didn't have a lot of money at that time, and it gave him a negative association with Jews for several years after. Instead of yelling at him or saying he was wrong or stupid to believe that, I took a different approach. I understood that he'd had this real experience that affected him in a particular way. So what I tried to do was change his perspective a little bit. I asked him how much he knew about this kid, other than him being Jewish. Maybe this kid was having a hard time paying the bills. You know, college kids aren't exactly famous for having a lot of extra cash. Maybe when he ordered that delivery, it was a once-in-a-while splurge after passing a test or something. Hell, maybe he was just really high and hungry and forgot to pay the tip. Or maybe a million other things. There's no way to know. Moreover, even if this one particular kid was just a tight-fisted asshole, you can't judge a whole group of people because of what one person did. That'd be as bad as assuming all black people are criminals because once you saw a black dude mugging someone on the news. And I said to the guy, you wouldn't want other people judging you like that, right? So don't judge him. And when I said that, I could see in the rearview mirror that the guy had such a smile on his face. When he got to a red light, he looked at me and said, you know, I really never thought about it that way. I never considered what was going on with that kid. Thanks, man. I was really pissed for a long time, and now I see it differently. And the thing is, nothing I said was particularly brilliant or hard to understand. You know, it's really pretty basic stuff. Trying to see things from other people's point of view, having a little patience and forgiveness. There's nothing radical here. And yet it's something our society has forgotten how to do. Even some of the most well-meaning among us. I wonder if there's a single Democratic politician who could have had that kind of conversation with a voter. We've forgotten that people can have bad, stupid, or ignorant ideas and beliefs without themselves being bad, stupid, or ignorant. Decent people can believe really dumb shit. That's not to say that there aren't bad people out there. Trump and every other MAGA elected official is a monster. But they aren't most people. Even with things like racism and homophobia, there's different kinds of people. There's those that just truly hate blacks and gays and Muslims and Mexicans and whoever else. You know, these people have real rage in their hearts. And then there are people who've just been lied to and frightened, or who've had one negative experience corrupted and reinforced with bad information. And that brings me to another point. Many of my favorite commentators, truly decent and moral people, have been saying that America deserves this, and America wanted this. That the people actively chose to vote for dictatorship and criminality and ignorance and bigotry. Some did, but not the majority. Not even the majority of Trump voters. It's so easy to get stuck in our own bubbles, to think that everyone has the same information that we do. And that applies to a lot of political junkies. They think everybody knows all the details just like they do. In reality, most people are deeply, deeply disconnected from politics. They find it scary and confusing and have no idea who to trust. And the only way to reach them is to talk to them like people. We have to learn to bring our real emotions and beliefs and values to our politics. And we have to acknowledge the real emotions and beliefs and values of others. We have to try to understand people before we judge them, and treat each other with a whole lot more forgiveness than we do now. Good faith and good intention have more meaning than ideological purity. Too often we treat politics as a game, especially the politicians themselves. We have to be honest and sincere with people. That means that you call out real evil when you see it, but it also means you reserve judgment until you are certain that somebody really has ill will and bad intent, regardless of what they believe or what party they're in. It's not just about my side or their side. This is about real people's actual lives. There is no way forward except together. This is the United States of America. And when we have each other's backs, there's nothing we can't do. We kick Nazi ass, we go to the moon, whatever, we got it. That also requires us to care about each other. We can't treat every issue like a zero-sum game, where your gain is my loss. That simply isn't true. We really can all do better, live better together. We just have to remind ourselves of that and start having the real conversations that can actually move our country forward. I'm going to do my part to try to make that happen, and I hope you will too. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for watching that video, everyone. Now, if you liked that video, then please like the video, and of course, share and subscribe. And most importantly, please, if you can, comment. Because it's not only really good for me algorithmically in terms of getting my channel views, but I'm also kind of new at this, and I would love your feedback, your advice, your thoughts, comments, ideas, anything like that. So please leave a message, like, subscribe, and share. Till next time, bye-bye.